10 points, 10 points. I get lots of people who ask me about how do you get black and tans, blue and tans, chocolate and tans, lilac and tans. How do you get 10 points? So I did a video on the coat color calculator, and that's a great place for you to go learn about this, because you can put combinations of genetics in and it shows you what the dog looks like. So you can actually get a visual representation of how you might go about getting a tan-pointed dog. So what is a tan-pointed dog? It's a dog that has tan points typically on its legs, the lower third of the legs, above the eyebrows, on the cheeks, and on the rump. Those are tan-pointed dogs. Now, a tan-pointed dog, there's a number of ways to get here, but there is the agouti, the A locus, has three possibilities that you can have on that locus. You can have either AY, A, or AT. Those are the three possible genes that you can have. And remember, all these genes are always pairs. So you can have an AY dog. That dog will not show tan points, ever. You can have an AYA, that dog will not show tan points, or you can have an AYAT. That dog may show some degree of coloration on its face. It's basically, that is really a sable dog, and it will have kind of some shading going on. That is a sable, so it's not really a tan point. This is not 10 points, and this is not 10 points. Okay, so then the next combination is we're going to go with the AT gene. So how could the AT be? You can have AT, that is 10 points. And you can have ATA, and that is also 10 points. And you can typically see the difference between these two dogs. This tends to be more of an orangey color on the tan. This tends to be more of a white, creamy color on the tan. And then the last combination you could have would be AA. And that is what's called double recessive black. And that will not have tan points and typically has a solid coat color. Okay. But this is all combined with some other genes as well that have to be played into this to get these tan points out. So now that I've got that out of the way, so this is specifically talking about the A gene. You've basically got to have either an AT or an ATA dog to get tan points. All right. None of the others are going to produce tan points. So, now that we know that, we're going to start looking at some dogs, their whole genetic code, to decide what they might be. So, we know this. We know that we're going to have a dog that is either AT, or it's going to be ATA. That's going to be a requirement to get tan-pointed dogs. The next thing is you cannot have Brindle present, because it will completely wipe out the majority of the tan points. If a dog has a copy of Brindle, the KBR gene, then you will see some freckling maybe on its forepaws. That's about all you're going to see. It's not going to be very convincing at all. So the dog has to be KN. Sometimes that's reported as NN, but it's got to be no Brindle. And look, you see my videos where I talk about we don't want Brindle and people complain, "Oh, you don't like Brindle dogs." I love Brindle dogs. Just that if you've got a Brindle dog, it ain't going to produce very many tan-pointed dogs if that's what you're trying to do. So it's one reason that maybe you want to avoid Brindle. If you've got a dog with one copy of Brindle and you breed that back, you can potentially get a litter of half Brindles and half not Brindles, and you can then start producing tan-pointed dogs. But the important thing here is you must not have Brindle present if you want to produce a tan-pointed dog. So we know that the dog has to be, I'm going to write this, it's written different ways, but I'm going to write this as KN. Whoops. KN. That we know, right. Okay, so now the next thing is if this dog is a cream dog, then it will not show the tan points, although they, just like the Brindle, it could have tan points, but you won't see them because the dog looks like a cream dog. Because remember, cream is like white paint, covers everything up. So the dog has to be either that or that. It cannot be little e. That will wipe it out. Just like over here, we can't have a KB, that wipes it out. So we can't have a cream dog. If you've got a cream dog, it's not going to show it. Now, let's keep on going here. What about some of the other genes here that aren't particularly relevant to this? The fluffy gene. Sure, you can have a fluffy tan-pointed dog. A merle dog. Sure, you can have a merle tan points. So I'm not even going to mess with those because it doesn't affect the tan points. So now we're going to get into the color. This is going to determine whether this is a blue dog, a chocolate dog, a lilac dog, or a black dog. So if the dog is little d, that becomes a blue and tan. There's your blue and tan. Blue and tan. That's the blue and tan dog. If the dog is little b, or the other version of it, little co, that is a chocolate and tan. If the dog has all of this together, both of those genes, then this becomes a lilac and tan. Or if it's a BB, it's an Isabella tan. Excuse me. That's not true. Yes. If it's blue and chocolate, it's an Isabella tan. And if it's a blue and both of these chocolates together, it's a new shade tan. New shade tan. So we've got blue and tans, chocolate tans, lilac and tans. How do we get a black and tan? Because that's what prompted this whole thing. I had a number of people say, how do you get a black and tan? Well, you do this. You get rid of all that. Yes, get rid of all that stuff right there. You got yourself black and tan. So now that's a black and tan dog. So if the dog doesn't have blue, doesn't have chocolate, well, isn't blue, isn't chocolate, then it is a black and tan. So it's got to be either big D, or big D, which means it doesn't show blue, and it's got to be big B, or big B, and it's got to be big CO, or big CO, little co. All of those produce a black and tan. There's your black and tan. So just to kind of go over this one more time, the dog has to have the right copy on the A locus for tan points, ATA or ATAT. Cannot be brindle, can't be cream. Can't be cream. If you've got that and you don't have blue or chocolate in full force present, you get a black and tan. If you've got 2 copies of blue, it's a blue and tan. If you have 2 copies of chocolate, it's a chocolate and tan. If you have these together, it's some version of a lilac and tan. That's it. It's really relatively straightforward. So let's just have one bash at how you might put 2 dogs together that aren't tan-pointed dogs to produce a tan-pointed puppy. Because that's another thing that people can't just say, oh, you know, well, the first thing is if you put 2 tan-pointed dogs together that show tan points, you are going to get tan-pointed puppies unless they are cream. And the reason I can say that is because a dog that shows tan-pointed puppies doesn't have brindle. And a dog that has tan points is not going to be a cream. So we know we've got that out of the way. So 2 dogs put together that show visual tan points will produce visually tan-pointed dogs unless both dogs have a copy of cream and you get some cream dogs in there. That'll wipe out the tan points. They'll be there, we won't see them. And I didn't talk about pied. Pied also can muck up tan points because you can get what's called an extreme pied where it's almost exclusively white. Anywhere there's white, the tan points don't show. So if you've got a pied dog that is ATAT, then that dog, and it's white on its legs or on its face, you won't see the tan points and you wouldn't know it's a tan-pointed dog without a DNA test. So that's another thing I should have mentioned then, is about pied. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take 2 dogs, neither of which are tan-pointed dogs. Can we produce a tan-pointed dog? In fact, we're going to make it worse than that. We're going to make this a dog that carries a copy of blue, that carries a copy of tan points, that carries a copy of cream, that carries a copy of brindle, that carries a copy of pied. Not at all what you think was going to help you produce a tan-pointed dog. And we're going to put it with another dog with similar attributes. And what can we expect out of this? So those are two dogs that have got nothing apparently to do with tan points. The important thing is they both carry a copy, an ingredient for tan points. So a quarter of the dogs, well, we don't care about this because either of these are going to be, whether we end up here is we could end up with either dogs that have no blue, dogs that carry blue, or dogs that are blue. And that's just going to mean that we are going to either produce black and tans or blue and tans, depending on the outcome of that. So we don't care about that. Over here, we can end up with dogs that are AT. There's our ingredients of tan points. Half the time that dog gives a tan point, half the time that gives a tan point. So 1/4 of the dogs are going to have the ingredients for tan points. Only 1/4 of the dogs are going to be little e. The rest of the time they'll only have one copy or no copies of cream. So 1/4 of the time the dogs are going to, 3/4 of the time we can expect to get a non-cream dog out of that. KB, unfortunately we've got 75% of the time we are going to get brindle present, which means that we are only going to get that present. If you do the math, you'll find that it's 1/4. And same thing over here. This is half, a quarter of the dogs are going to be pied, which means that 3/4 will not be pied. NN. So we could do our math. All you got to do is multiply this all together, and that shows you the chances of you getting a tan-pointed dog out of that mix. So let's see here. Well, 3/4 by 3/4 is what is that? 6 over 16 is like a third. So it's a quarter by quarter essentially. So that's a 1/32. That's not quite exactly right, but it's damn close to being right. So you can see what's the chances of getting a tan-pointed dog out of those two dogs have nothing to do with tan points and all the things that we don't want for tan points. The answer is not very good, but it can happen. So, you can increase the odds dramatically if you start to get some of these things out of here. For example, if you make this a dog that is not a cream dog at all, and you make this a dog that has no brindle on it whatsoever, and it's not a pied dog at all, then what do you get? Well, the answer is that becomes a 1, and that becomes a 1, and that becomes a 1. And you get a litter of 1/4 tan-pointed dogs, of which they are going to be a mixture of blues and black and tans. So that is a lot better odds on that. So I think I've prattled on way too long on this. Love tan-pointed dogs. They've become very popular over the last few years. There's definitely a lot more of them out there than there were 5 years ago. So there's more chances of you getting a tan-pointed dog these days because there's a lot more choices of stud dogs. And if you look at my lineup and my 23 studs, the majority of them have got tan points, either AT or ATAs. Anyway, go to Love My Pups, My Breeding Supply. Please subscribe to us if you like this stuff, and enjoy your doggies. Bye, everybody.